are you, providing a brief introduction for the listeners?
My name is Frankie Hammoude, and I am currently one of the assistant softball coaches at St. Mary's College.
How did you get into softball, and did your parents or siblings play any other sports growing up, and how did this influence your athletic journey?
So I got into playing softball because I was a very energetic kid, and my mom wanted to put me in any possible sport that was happening so that I could burn off some energy. And I did play every single sport, and softball, I just happened to be pretty good at hitting the ball. So then I enjoyed it, and I just continued to play because I was good at it, and then I ended up here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the journey was like leading up to playing Division I softball at Oregon State?
It was a very long process. So to go back to your actual question before, my sister also played softball, my younger sister. And we played rec ball together until our age difference, we were a year apart, so then I always ended up going up a little higher, or age group higher. And then from rec ball, I tried out for the travel team that was connected to that rec league, and I made that, and I got pretty good at that. And then I went to a different travel organization, which was a little more competitive, and then from there I just kind of kept going into more competitive travel organizations. And then I kind of found out about getting a scholarship to play softball, and so I kind of put all my eggs in one basket with softball, and I started working extra hard with high level organizations, and then that became a whole recruiting process, and that was a lot of kind of honestly marketing yourself and emailing, making skills video. Like around my time, skills videos were like the new upcoming thing, so that was definitely part of it. And yeah, honestly it was definitely different because before, the recruiting rules were a lot different, and you could verbally commit as young as you could possibly be. Like, it didn't matter. So it was really about kind of getting your exposure as soon as you can, and almost, unfortunately, kind of peaking a little bit early to, show these like higher level schools your potential. And luckily, Oregon State kind of followed me for a while until I bloomed into I'd say a much better softball player than a lot of my fellow teammates were, getting verbaled in 8th grade, 9th grade, 7th grade even, and I just wasn't there at the same time as them. And luckily, Oregon State followed me long enough to give me a chance. So that's how I ended up there.
And looking back, what was the biggest challenge that you faced in the transition from high school and/or travel ball to college softball?
Definitely the biggest challenge is kind of finding yourself and your new purpose. When you're at travel ball level, usually if you're going to be a Division I athlete as well, you're probably one of the best players on your team. And with that, you can get away with a lot of bad habits, maybe not, fine-tuning a lot of things because you're so good compared to others. So when I got to college, I failed a lot more, and that was a new concept for me. I had always been, so good and the best player on the team, whatever. So kind of being able to accept that I'm going to fail, and then also I've always been an optimistic person. I think that was one of my biggest strengths as a softball player, and so still having that optimism, even if I wasn't performing, or maybe I just wasn't performing as well as I thought I should be. I think that was probably the biggest transition. And obviously, working out every single day and the grind, the literal grind. You think you're grinding in high school, but you're not. You're not.
And then looking at the academic side, how did you balance academics with training at the Division I level?
I would say I was very blessed. At Oregon State, we had a lot of resources, and I know I had like mandated study hall for a bit, and I think with that I kind of learned, okay, I can get, you know, a lot of things done in only 2 hours. And so I again was blessed, and I was able to take online classes while I was at school, so I didn't have to go into class as often as a lot of people do. And so I kind of would stack up as much work as I could on my off days, and then kind of chillax the rest of the week. And then I would say it was just more of like finding your own flow, because everyone works a lot different, and some people like only take 10 minutes on one thing, and that might take me a whole hour. So yeah, it was more of like kind of finding out what I need best and rolling with that.
And after your college career, you transitioned to playing professionally for a bit. What was that experience like, and how did it differ from playing at the collegiate level?
That experience was really fun. I had so much fun that summer, and it's interesting because I actually didn't play that much in comparison to what I had been my entire life. So that was interesting and like new for me. But I feel like I learned so much from the veterans and like just observing. And like biggest difference was like, you know, you're not like, you're being told where to be and when to be there to an extent, but all your training, all your extra stuff is genuinely on you, and like you can do what you need and do what you want, whether it's like in the pregame, whether it's before practice, during practice. Like it was all pretty free range of what you needed, to be honest. And so that was definitely new and different for me. But other than that, like softball, right?
And then would you ever consider going back and playing professionally?
Yes, I definitely would. I feel like I'm still in this like limbo in between of trying to decide if I want to play or just coach. But I think the way the game is growing, it's really exciting and that's fun. And I'm very much a competitor, and I just like to compete. So I would love to get my hands a little dirty in that.
And touching on softball growing over the last few years, especially in terms of media coverage and recognition, how have you seen the sport evolve since you first began playing at a young age, the Division I level and professionally? And what do you think has contributed to that growth?
I think there's a lot of things, of course. I started when I was like 6, so that's about 20 years worth of change. And like I would say, like when I was first starting, you know, the rec league was like, that was the cool thing, like there's a rec league, cool. And then like once I got into travel ball, I was like, oh, there's another big world out here, okay. And then once I started getting into recruiting, I was like, oh, there's an even bigger world with college athletics, okay. But I think like just media coverage like itself has helped generate a lot of interest in the sport. I think those big programs like the Oklahomas and like that type of stuff, like that is always really like, unfortunately that's great for the sport but not great for us. But it's good because, you know, we are working just as hard and doing just as much as any male sport is, and we just weren't getting the resources to show. And I think that's nice that finally we are getting, like at least some programs are getting a lot more resources to do this and a lot more coverage. And kind of it really was coming down to, do we have the resources to make our sport grow? Because I think the sport has always been popular. It was just a matter of showing that it's popular. So, yeah.
And how do you think your experience as a player has influenced your approach to coaching here at St. Mary's?
I think I had a lot of different things happen to me as a player, whether it was good, bad, like I've seen it all, I feel like. And with that, I think I have a diverse mindset in like how to go about certain things. And I even took like a youth coaching class when I was in college, and one of the biggest things that ever stood out to me was the reverse golden rule, and that was treat people the way they want to be treated. And I feel like that stuck out to me as a coach so much, because I've always just been taught like treat people the way you want to be treated, and most of the time that's like, it's so respectful, that's so good, but a lot of coaches I think miss like the connection between them and their player, because they just don't know how their player actually wants to be connected with. So I think just trying to understand each individual has definitely, like, from my experience at least, that has definitely helped me now coach these girls.
And what are some values that you try to instill in your players that you coach here?
That's funny. I feel like I just recently kind of asked one of the girls, what do I harp on you guys on? And it's the little things. Like, I'm really particular about really random things, whether it's like how the bin should look, or what kind of ball should be in this bin, like, you know, how our water bags are, like, literally the most, like, probably to the girls meticulous things, but it all ends up kind of falling back on the actual softball part. And like, if you don't take care of all these little things, like, it turns into a big snowball, and we want to avoid the snowball. I'd say that gratitude, definitely gratitude, and just having empathy and like courage to be empathetic, to be quite honest, because I think it's really easy to be judgmental, especially in sport, and especially in a sport with all women around you, and like with the media and all this stuff. It's really easy to get caught up in the judgment and that stuff. And so if we can empathize and just like take care of each other, I think that is like a big thing I always harp on too.
And what role do you think team culture plays in the development of athletes, and how did it change as you went from Oregon State to Athletes Unlimited to now coaching here at St. Mary's?
That is a great question.
A loaded one.
A loaded question, for sure, yes. Culture plays a huge part. Like, I can say, coming from Oregon State to here, the culture is completely different. And like, that starts, you know, from the very top of the chain, right? And I think it plays such a huge part in the development of the athletes, like, honestly, outside of softball, truly. When I think of culture, I feel like culture is the stemming factor of how people end up outside of their sport. And yeah, it's just a lot different from when I was in college. And like, part of that is like society is also changing, and so we have to change with society. And whether that's like, now we're a lot more focused on like the mental health of athletes, which is really great, because that probably wasn't really a thought in a lot of people's brains back when I was playing, right? And it was like just the start of that. And I think it's really nice that our head coach is willing to change with the times. And I think it's not necessarily the most easy thing for others, especially if they've been in this game for a really long time, to do so. So, I don't know. I guess to answer your question, the culture is definitely different, and it plays a huge part. But at the same time, I think it all ends up being on the individual of how do you want to take this information? How do you want to, you know, like, present yourself? And, like, do you fit this culture? And is this culture something that you actually stand for too? And I think that is a huge piece.
What was the transition like going from player to coach for you?
It was hard, but not in the same sense. It's hard because sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, why don't you guys get it? And then when I catch myself, I'm like, okay, wait, let me just like explain why, right? And so that I think was a little bit tough. And then also like sometimes I just want to get out there and hit with them or like, you know, play softball with them, and I can't. But I think like the biggest transition is like, well, I was always a leader on my team. So I think now that I have the privilege to genuinely lead a whole team, and like the whole team looks up to me and is actually trying to like listen, and it's not like pulling teeth to try to get people to hop on the boat with you. And I think that again goes down to the culture of this program, and it just made the transition, to be honest, a lot easier for me. And I've always kind of done lessons my entire life, so it wasn't too hard to teach the softball portion. But I think it's more of like kind of I'm also young, and so kind of finding my balance between, you know, being personable with the girls and also being professional. I think that's a big challenge.
And then in your opinion, how has the landscape of youth softball changed since you were growing up, and how does that impact athletes today?
I think a big part is definitely the media, right? You know, nowadays, like, I feel like there's so many more resources to try to get yourself better. And, like, I can probably count on a singular hand how many facilities I could have used when I was growing up. And now, at least I hope, there's a lot more options for youth girls to go practice at. And then also, like, the media has a lot more video, like instructional videos and like a lot of stuff like that. So I feel like the level of athleticism maybe is definitely higher in youth than it has been in previous, I think. And maybe it's gotten a little more competitive, but I think it's just like there is also just a lot more people that are interested in it and want to try it, and there's the space to do that, and that is really nice. And hopefully we can continue to like grow that and roll with that, because in reality, if we give people the resources they need, you can succeed however you need, right?
Yes. And then how has the game of softball changed with technology?
Ooh. It's funny because I feel like I'm very much a in between old school, new school type thing, and because I just kind of in my entire life was not taught with the technology, but now that we have it, I feel like it's really nice. I actually was just talking to my old hitting coach about, because he works at A&M, and I was asking him what numbers do you guys even look at? Like I feel like I don't even know what to look at other than this number, right? And he's like, well, find the numbers that work for you. So I think like technology is now just giving us more information to articulate what we already knew, which is really nice, because now it's like, oh, we have the hard numbers to show you that this is XYZ. And then also too, like some of these, you know, bigger schools have the money to install replay and like install pitch tracking and stuff like that. So I think that just makes it more fun for the population to understand softball, for one, and like two, to just like make it more competitive. Like now we get to overturn calls that maybe make or break a game, or like now we have someone throwing 76 mile an hour, and like we can pop that on the TV and show everyone. Like that's so cool, right? So I think it just gives us the outlet to show what we already had, but like show it off.
And then what advice would you give to athletes looking to play collegiate softball, knowing how the recruiting process has changed over the years?
Ooh, I would say take your time. Like, I think there is such a big push on, like, you know, get recruited fast and, like, get committed and all this stuff. But you are, like, you know yourself the best. And that experience is so, like, you're only going to get to do it one time in your life. And college coaches, we get to do it as many times as we're at the college, right? Like, we're recruiting all the time. So don't, like, allow outside factors, whether it's media or your family or other coaches or whatever, to influence your decision, because at the end of the day, you're going to be the one committing to a program and basically signing up saying, I'm committed to this and I'm going to show up to this my 100% every time. And if you don't think that is if that's not your full decision, your own decision, that's going to end up weighing on you while you're there. And so I just encourage people to, like, go with their gut. Choose what feels most right in your heart and in your mind and in the gut, because most of the time that's probably the best place for you.
And as someone who competed at both the collegiate level as well as played at the professional level, how would you define mental toughness in softball, and how do you teach that to your players?
I would say mental toughness in softball is your ability to have resilience. Softball is a failure sport, so you're going to fail a lot more than you succeed, and you're going to still be considered successful, you know? So I think mental toughness in that sense is, like, how are you going to respond as soon as, you know, the wheels fall off? As soon as you make a error on defense, how are you responding? You strike out looking, how are you responding, right? Like, are you going to dwell in it, or are you going to pop up and show up and be the best teammate again? Like, I think we can misconstrue like mental toughness as, like, being hard on yourself and, like, being tough on yourself. And, like, yeah, you want to be hard on yourself, but to an extent of you're pushing yourself because you're constructively trying to achieve a goal versus, you know, I suck or whatever, right? So I think if you're being resilient and working towards a goal and continuously trying to work towards that goal, that's mental toughness.
And to wrap up, where do you see yourself in the future in terms of coaching?
I hope that I end up, you know, getting, I personally am not a future looker. Like, I don't have a 5-year plan. I'm more of like if this opportunity arises, then I'll take it type of thing. So I hope in the future, like, I love coaching and I love softball, and I just want to have an environment that I love to go to every single day, and that I am financially stable enough to do that, right? And, like, be comfortable enough to not have to worry about that type of stuff. But other than that, I feel like I'm pretty much an open book. I'm down to do whatever. So, yeah.
That's it.
Cool.